When a racist gang targets a black man helping a pregnant woman at a bus stop, they think they've found an easy victim. What they don't realize is that he's a boxing champion and they're about to regret every move they make. Stay tuned to witness how courage and skill turn the tables on injustice. The sun hung high in a clear blue sky, casting a golden hue over the bustling suburban street. It was the kind of day that invited smiles and unhurried steps, but for Michael Carter, it was just another moment of quiet observation. Sitting on the edge of a weathered bench at the bus stop, his frame leaned slightly forward, his broad shoulders relaxed. He adjusted the hood of his gray sweatshirt, tugging it lightly over his short cropped hair as he rested his hands on his knees. Michael didn't need much to blend in. A retired boxing champion who had once graced arenas and taken home belts, he now preferred the peace of anonymity. His dark skin glistened faintly under the sunlight, the only sign of his past intensity visible in the faint scars along his knuckles, a subtle testimony to the wars he'd fought in the ring. His eyes, sharp yet warm, surveyed the street, taking in the rhythmic flow of life. He wasn't waiting for a bus. Michael rarely did. He simply enjoyed sitting at bus stops, watching people, and reflecting on his day. The distant sound of children laughing, the rhythmic click of a bicycle passing by, it was these simple moments that grounded him. It was then that he noticed her. At the far end of the street, a woman struggled to carry 2 large grocery bags, her steps uneven under the weight. Her belly, round and prominent, spoke of a child on the way. She paused, shifting her bags awkwardly, her face etched with fatigue. Michael's instinct for compassion kicked in. Rising smoothly from the bench, he crossed the pavement in a few easy strides. "Here, let me help you," he said gently, his voice calm and steady. The woman, startled at first, looked up at him. Her light brown skin glowed under the sunlight, and despite the sweat beading on her brow, her expression softened at Michael's offer. "Oh, thank you," she said, her voice breathy with relief. "I didn't think I'd make it to the stop." Michael took the bags with ease, the weight barely registering in his hands. "No problem," he replied, offering a reassuring smile. "Let's get you seated." They walked together toward the bench he'd just left. And as they sat, Sophia, as she introduced herself, shared a little about her day. "I didn't realize how heavy these would get," she said, laughing nervously. "I was just trying to get enough for the week before my husband comes back from his trip." Michael nodded, listening attentively. He rarely spoke about himself in moments like this, preferring to focus on others. Sophia's gratitude was evident, and for Michael, that was enough. Unbeknownst to them, a group of men loitered a few yards away near the entrance of a convenience store. 4 of them stood casually, leaning against the building's wall or sitting on the curb, but their body language suggested anything but relaxation. Trevor, the apparent leader, smirked as he watched Michael and Sophia. Dressed in a black leather jacket, his tall, muscular frame and confident posture marked him as someone used to getting what he wanted. Beside him, Eddie cracked open a soda can, his nervous eyes darting between Trevor and the scene unfolding at the bus stop. "Look at him," Trevor said, his tone dripping with disdain. "Playing the hero." Eddie chuckled, though it sounded forced. "Guess he thinks he's better than us, huh?" The others joined in, their laughter low and mocking. To them, Michael's act of kindness was something to deride, a chance to flex their prejudices and assert dominance. Trevor tossed his can aside and gestured toward the bus stop. "Let's go see what Superman over there's up to." The subtle shift in atmosphere didn't go unnoticed by a few passers-by. A middle-aged man walking his dog glanced nervously at the gang before looking away, quickening his pace. A young woman across the street fumbled with her phone, pretending not to notice. Michael, engrossed in ensuring Sophia was comfortable, didn't see the group's approach. Sophia, however, caught sight of them in the corner of her eye. Her smile faded slightly, and her hand instinctively moved to her belly. "Something wrong?" Michael asked, his voice still calm but laced with concern. Sophia hesitated, then shook her head. "It's nothing," she said softly, but her glance toward the gang betrayed her unease. Michael turned his head slightly, catching sight of the men. His expression didn't change, but a quiet shift in his posture signaled that he'd noticed them too. Years of training had taught him to read people quickly. And the gang's body language was unmistakable. They weren't approaching for a friendly chat. Trevor and his gang stopped a few feet away, their sneers evident. Trevor's gaze lingered on Michael before flicking to Sophia, his smirk widening. "Looks like you're doing charity work today," Trevor said, his voice loud enough to draw attention. Michael didn't respond immediately, his focus remaining on Sophia. He shifted slightly in front of her, a quiet but deliberate move to shield her. Trevor's smirk faltered slightly at Michael's lack of reaction. "Hey, I'm talking to you," he said, his tone sharper now. Michael finally met Trevor's gaze, his expression calm but unreadable. "You need something?" he asked, his voice even. Eddie snickered, nudging another gang member. "Big guy's got a mouth on him," he muttered. Sophia's grip tightened on the bench, her breathing shallow. Michael noticed and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's fine," he said softly, though his eyes never left the gang. The tension in the air thickened as the gang closed the distance. Trevor, his confidence unwavering, motioned for his crew to spread out, their movements slow and deliberate. Michael remained seated, his body relaxed but poised. Inside, his mind assessed every detail, the gang's positioning, their demeanor, and the potential threats they posed. His years in the ring had prepared him for moments like this, but for now he chose stillness. The sun beat down on the bus stop as the atmosphere shifted from calm to tense. Michael stood beside Sophia, ensuring she was seated comfortably on the bench. He handed her one of the water bottles he had pulled from her grocery bag, his movements deliberate and calm, despite sensing the gang's eyes on him. Trevor leaned against the metal frame of the convenience store's door, his smirk widening as he watched the scene unfold. "Look at him, acting like some kind of saint," he muttered to Eddie, who chuckled nervously. "Helping her out like he's better than us," Eddie added, stealing a glance at Trevor for approval. Trevor pushed himself off the wall, his boots scraping against the pavement as he took a few slow steps toward the bus stop. "Hey," he called out, loud enough to draw attention from a couple of passers-by, who quickly looked away. Michael glanced over his shoulder but didn't respond. Instead, he turned back to Sophia, offering a reassuring smile. "You'll be fine," he said softly. "Just stay seated and rest." Sophia, noticing the gang's approach, clutched her purse tighter. "Maybe we should just go," she whispered, her voice tinged with unease. "Don't worry about them," Michael replied, his voice steady. Trevor stopped a few feet away, arms crossed as he looked Michael up and down. "You always make it your business to play hero?" he asked, his tone mocking. Michael remained silent, picking up the last of Sophia's scattered groceries and placing them neatly at her side. Eddie joined in, his voice louder this time. "Must feel real good, huh? Helping a lady out while the rest of us stand here like we're invisible." The other gang members chuckled, their laughter dripping with sarcasm. Trevor, emboldened by their response, stepped closer. "Hey, I'm talking to you," he said, his tone sharper. Michael finally straightened, turning to face Trevor. His expression was calm, almost unreadable, as he met Trevor's gaze. "You need something?" he asked, his voice low but firm. Trevor smirked, his posture loosening slightly. "Yeah, I need to know why you think you can come into our space and act like you're some big deal." Sophia, still seated on the bench, had had enough. "Why don't you leave him alone?" she said, her voice trembling slightly but clear. Trevor's eyes flicked to her, his smirk fading momentarily before returning with an edge. "Excuse me," he said, feigning disbelief. "You heard me," Sophia continued, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "He's just trying to help. Maybe you should try doing the same instead of standing around causing trouble." The gang erupted in laughter, their mocking tones echoing off the walls of the nearby buildings. "Wow," Eddie said, clutching his sides. "She's got a mouth on her." Trevor, now visibly irritated, took another step forward. "Lady, you might want to sit this one out. I'm talking to him." Sophia opened her mouth to respond, but Michael raised a hand gently, signaling for her to stop. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm. Trevor's smirk returned, but there was a dangerous glint in his eyes now. He moved closer, closing the gap between himself and Michael. "You think you're tough, huh?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. Michael didn't flinch, his posture relaxed yet ready. "I think you should step back," he said evenly, his voice steady but firm. Trevor's smirk turned into a scowl. Or what he challenged, his tone laced with arrogance. Without warning, Trevor reached out and grabbed Michael's arm, his grip tight. "What are you going to do?" "Hero," he sneered. Michael's eyes flicked down to Trevor's hand, then back to his face. "I'm telling you to let go," he said, his tone calm but with an undercurrent of warning. Trevor, mistaking Michael's composure for weakness, gave a shove. "Make me," he taunted. Michael stumbled back a step but quickly regained his footing. His hands remained at his sides, his expression unchanged. "I'm giving you one last chance," he said quietly. "Walk away." Trevor laughed, the sound hollow. "Oh, we've got a tough guy here," he said, turning to his crew. "Looks like Superman's about to lose his cape." Eddie and the others joined in the laughter, circling around Michael and Sophia. The tension in the air was thick, the distant sounds of traffic and birds drowned out by the gang's jeers. Sophia, her hands trembling, tried to stand, but Michael placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, keeping her seated. "Stay where you are," he said softly, his voice filled with reassurance. Trevor, sensing the growing attention from bystanders, moved closer again, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You think you're better than me? Let's see how tough you really are." Michael's jaw tightened, but his composure didn't waver. Inside, he calculated every possible move, his training as a boxer ingrained in his instincts. He knew he could end this quickly if needed, but his discipline held him back. The gang laughed again, oblivious to the storm brewing behind Michael's calm exterior. The bystanders looked on, some pulling out their phones to record, sensing that this quiet man wasn't as ordinary as he seemed. The stage was set for the inevitable clash, with Michael standing tall in the face of the gang's hostility. Trevor's fists tightened as he glared at Michael, his jaw clenched in frustration. The quiet confidence radiating from Michael was unnerving, though he'd never admit it. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue." Trevor sneered, stepping closer, his body tense with anticipation. Michael's stance was relaxed, his broad shoulders at ease, but his sharp eyes tracked every movement around him. The gang circled like wolves, their jeers growing louder as they tried to intimidate him. "Let's see how tough you really are," Trevor spat, swinging his fist in a wide arc aimed directly at Michael's face. Time seemed to slow as Michael leaned back effortlessly, the punch missing him by inches. Trevor, caught off balance, stumbled forward, and Michael stepped aside with practiced precision, his movements smooth and fluid. The gang froze momentarily, their laughter faltering. What the Trevor began, but before he could finish, Michael's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "I told you to walk away," he said, his tone calm yet firm. Trevor's face twisted with anger. "Get him," he barked, and the gang lunged. Eddie rushed in first, his fists swinging wildly. Michael deflected the punches with ease, his open palm redirecting Eddie's momentum before landing a clean, controlled jab to Eddie's shoulder. Eddie staggered back, clutching his arm in surprise. The second gang member, Tom, a stocky man with heavy hands, charged next. Michael sidestepped, hooking his arm under Tom's and twisting him to the ground in a single fluid motion. Tom groaned as he hit the pavement, his strength rendered useless by Michael's superior technique. Sophia gasped from the bench, her hands covering her mouth as she watched in stunned silence. The scene unfolding before her was unlike anything she'd ever witnessed. Michael moved like a seasoned warrior, each motion deliberate and precise. Trevor, now furious, grabbed a metal pipe from the nearby bench and swung it toward Michael's side. Michael stepped back, the pipe missing him by mere inches, the clang echoing off the pavement. "You don't want to do this," Michael said, his voice low but carrying an edge of warning. Trevor ignored him, swinging again with more force. This time, Michael caught the pipe mid-swing, twisting it from Trevor's grip and tossing it aside. In the same motion, he delivered a controlled strike to Trevor's midsection, sending him doubling over. Eddie tried again, charging from behind, but Michael spun around, delivering a clean jab to Eddie's chest that sent him sprawling onto the ground. The gang members groaned, their earlier bravado replaced by confusion and fear. Michael stood in the center of the chaos, his breath steady, his posture unchanged. The scuffle had drawn a small crowd. Bystanders watched with wide eyes, their phones raised to record the scene. Among them, a middle-aged man squinted at Michael, his jaw dropping as recognition dawned. "That's Michael Carter," he shouted, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "The boxing champion." A ripple of disbelief spread through the onlookers. "No way," someone muttered. "That's him? The undefeated champ." Trevor froze mid-step, his eyes darting to Michael. The realization hit him like a freight train. His opponent wasn't just any man, he was a professional fighter, one of the best in the world. "See champion," Eddie stammered, his voice shaky as he tried to push himself off the ground. Michael's calm gaze met Trevor's, his expression unreadable. "Now you understand," he said simply. Sophia's heart raced as she processed what was happening. The man who had kindly offered to carry her groceries, who had sat beside her with quiet reassurance, was now effortlessly defending himself against the gang. She felt a mix of awe and gratitude. Not only had Michael stepped in to help her without hesitation, but he'd also shown a level of strength and discipline that seemed almost otherworldly. "Who are you?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. Michael glanced her way, offering a small, reassuring nod before turning his attention back to the gang. Trevor staggered backward, clutching his ribs, his arrogance replaced by palpable fear. "We didn't know," he stammered, his earlier bravado completely shattered. "That's the problem," Michael replied, stepping forward. His tone remained calm, but there was steel in his gaze. "You didn't care to know. You judged me before you even had a chance to think." Eddie helped Tom to his feet, both of them limping as they backed away slowly. "Let's get out of here," Eddie muttered, panic lacing his voice. Trevor hesitated, his pride keeping him rooted in place. But as Michael took another step toward him, his fear won out. He raised his hands defensively, his voice shaking. All right, we're leaving." Michael stopped, watching as Trevor turned and fled, his gang scrambling after him. As the gang disappeared down the street, the crowd erupted in murmurs. Some applauded, while others exchanged astonished glances. Michael turned back to Sophia, his expression softening. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Sophia nodded, still too stunned to speak. Before Michael could say more, a man from the crowd called out, "You could have taken them out completely. Why'd you hold back?" Michael paused, looking toward the crowd. "Because strength isn't about hurting people," he said, his voice firm. "It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves, and knowing when to stop." His words hung in the air, leaving a profound silence in their wake. Michael bent down, picking up Sophia's bags and offering her his hand. "Let's get you on that bus," he said with a small smile. Sophia took his hand, her gratitude evident in her tear-filled eyes. As they walked toward the approaching bus, the crowd parted, their phones still recording as they captured the image of a true champion, not just in the ring but in life. The scene ended with Michael helping Sophia board the bus, his figure disappearing into the distance, leaving behind a humbled gang and an inspired community. The gang's footsteps echoed loudly against the pavement as they fled, their earlier arrogance shattered. Trevor clutched his side, his labored breaths heavy with pain and humiliation. Eddie and the others followed close behind, throwing nervous glances over their shoulders, their defeat a sharp contrast to the mocking bravado they displayed earlier. Michael stood still, watching them retreat, his chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. His calm composure remained unbroken, though his eyes held a quiet intensity. Around him, the small crowd of onlookers began to move closer, their murmurs growing louder. "That was incredible," someone said, their phones still pointed toward Michael. "Did you see how he handled them?" another added. The faint wail of sirens cut through the murmurs as two squad cars pulled up to the curb. Officers stepped out, their expressions sharp as they assessed the scene. A bystander approached one of the officers, showing them the video recording on their phone. "They attacked him," the bystander explained. "But he didn't lose control, just defended himself." One of the officers approached Michael, their posture neutral but professional. "Sir, we've been informed about an altercation. Are you all right?" Michael nodded, his voice steady. "I'm fine. The pregnant woman here was being harassed. I stepped in to help." Sophia, still seated on the bench, quickly spoke up, her voice trembling with emotion. "He saved me. They were going to hurt me, and he stopped them." The officer gave a reassuring nod. "Thank you for your statement. We'll need both of you to provide formal accounts, but it seems like we have plenty of evidence." As the officers reviewed the videos shared by the crowd, they issued a bolo: "Be on the lookout for Trevor and his gang." The growing number of witnesses made it clear the gang's actions wouldn't go unnoticed. Once the police had stepped aside, Sophia turned to Michael, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for his arm. "I don't even know how to thank you," she said, her voice thick with tears. Michael knelt slightly to meet her eye level, his expression soft. "You don't have to thank me," he said gently. "I'm just glad you and your baby are safe." Sophia shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You didn't have to step in, but you did. You didn't just protect me. You reminded me there are good people in this world." Michael offered her a small smile, his humility shining through. "Sometimes doing the right thing is all we can do. That's what matters." Sophia wiped her tears and placed a hand over her belly. "You've done more than you know," she said quietly. Hours later, the video of the altercation began to circulate online. Shared by multiple bystanders, it showed the gang's harassment, their failed attempts to overpower Michael, and the discipline with which he defended himself. The headline accompanying the video read, "Boxing champion Michael Carter protects pregnant woman from harassment." The footage quickly went viral, drawing widespread attention. News outlets picked up the story, hailing Michael as a hero who had stood against prejudice and violence. Social media exploded with comments praising his actions. This is what real strength looks like, protecting those who can't protect themselves. Michael Carter is the definition of a true champion, both in and out of the ring. Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks bullying is acceptable. Karma always wins. The public backlash against Trevor and his gang was swift and unforgiving. Within days, they were arrested and charged with harassment and attempted assault, their reputations irreparably tarnished. As the commotion died down, Michael found himself back at his favorite spot in the boxing gym, a quiet corner where he often sat to think after his training sessions. The faint hum of punching bags being struck and the rhythmic sound of jump ropes filled the air, grounding him in the familiarity of his routine. He wrapped his hands with tape slowly, the motion deliberate as his thoughts lingered on the day's events. While he was relieved that justice had been served, the incident weighed on him. It wasn't the fight itself, it was the reminder of how often people were judged by their appearance, how quickly prejudice could spiral into violence. Coach Ray, his longtime mentor, approached quietly and sat beside him. "Heard about what happened," Ray said, his gruff voice softened with concern. "You did good out there." Michael nodded, his gaze fixed on the floor. "I didn't want it to come to that," he admitted. "But sometimes, standing by isn't an option." Ray placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's why you're different, Michael. You don't just fight for yourself, you fight for others. That's what makes you a champion." Michael looked up, his expression thoughtful. "I just hope it made a difference," he said. Ray smiled. "Trust me, it did. People need to see there's still good in this world. And you showed them that today." Later that evening, as Michael walked home, the city lights casting a warm glow over the streets, he noticed a small group gathered near a bus stop. Among them was a young man helping an elderly woman with her groceries, his movements careful and respectful. Michael paused, a faint smile crossing his lips as he continued on his way. The memory of the day replayed in his mind. Not the fight, but the gratitude in Sophia's eyes, the cheers of the crowd, and the knowledge that he had done the right thing. As he reached his front door, Michael glanced back at the quiet street behind him, the weight of the day lifting from his shoulders. Strength wasn't just about the punches he threw, it was about the lives he touched and the difference he made. With that thought, he stepped inside, leaving behind a story that would inspire others to stand tall against injustice. Thank you for watching this story of courage and justice. If this inspired you or made you think, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to see it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that matter, stories that remind us all of the power of standing up for what's right. Together we can share these messages and make a real difference.